So our Mercury day, Shirley here with Sirius Stellus Moon, and the Sun is in between Black Moon Lilith and Mercury, that's opposing Uranus. The Moon is 17 degrees Scorpio. We're about to have a full moon in Scorpio. The Moon is with the midheaven. Mars conjoining Antares, and the Ascendant 0 degree Aquarius conjoining Pluto. Now, what prompted me to press record is this video by Thai Thoughts that talks about basically dealing with malevolent tourists. And for me, it was in my algorithm because she talked about Israeli tourists. And in fact, we did have an article in Israel about the fact that Israelis are not wanted in Thailand anymore because they have been acting out. And in the comment section, the other the other area that really popped up was Cyprus, and indeed there are the issues of Israelis buying land there and buying land illegally. In Cyprus, I think it was even land that of people that were evacuated by genocide. Like there was somebody that didn't manage to get away with. And now let's talk about something. As an Israeli, how would you most easily get rid of those particular Israeli tourists that you don't want in your countries? Very simple. The Israeli tourists that you don't want in your countries come to rape children and or rape and get away with that. They live according to a do as thou wilt type of Aleister Crowley. It's a particular type of Satanism that is infused with trauma. Okay, so this is not a bash on pagan beliefs. Basically, it's based on trauma, and the people that grow from this trauma, that don't grow from that grow with this trauma, but not from this trauma. That's the big deal. Um, they want to get away with. They have this toxic juxtaposition of believing that they can get away with everything, that there is no karma to their actions, and so they can do as they wish, but then it is infused with trauma. So instead of like, if I could just do as I wish without thinking about consequences, I would very likely fall into the things that would bring me good karma in other type of belief systems, simply because what I actually desire what is, I actually desire to desire what is good for me, and then what I actually desire is to be happy, joyous, healthy, okay, have longevity, travel, have a nice home. Like, there are many things that I don't think about, like raping and get away with that, violating children, or stealing from, from stores. In fact, I would kind of look at, hey, what do I actually want? What would be the thing that would be like really enjoyable for me, or joy that stands the test of time, and the joy that is, fleeting, like the joy of the seasons. Like, but people that live in trauma realms, they don't see the world that way. That correlates with places and countries where one could rape, rape children, and get away with that. And this is the countries that suffer from that particular type of Israeli tourists the most. So Thailand is one place where it's literally known that they come to rape children. And so what is in Thailand is supposedly stays in Thailand. Okay? It's not, it's extortion cults, but still, if those extortion cults exist, and here is the thing, the Israeli shekel is strong because of war, not despite of it. And we actually have advertisements that say, start saving for peace. And so, as terrorizing as it is, the Israeli shekel is not strong in the sense that when we go to the grocery store, we don't have buying power in Israel. Of course, Israel is a nation of quite traumatized people that feel persecuted, and the persecuted narrative is being reverberated on and on and on. And so the sense of entitlement that comes with that makes it even more challenging, particularly to those that do participate in the dark occult practices. And that's how they view the do as thou wilt. So what countries would be attractive to that type of population? Countries where the Israeli shekel can buy a lot. Okay? Countries where they can rape children and get away with that. Countries where they can rape young girls or young women and get away with that. Countries where they can import women and convert them to Judaism. Okay, the Ukrainian bride, something that was actually quite famous. Um, so, what is to do to deal with the Israeli problem, okay, outside of Israel, and then and filter out the cult-like tourism from the actual tourism that can have buying power, that can support the economy, and doesn't have those traits, okay, those, and that would be, um, and that would be indeed tending to the extortion cults, changing the law regarding rape in the country, tending to the internal corruption, okay, um, making sure that the commoners have land. Because if the commoners don't have each of them plot of land and housing, and that they are able to grow food with food, protect the airspace. Okay, that if their soil is, um, you know, being infused with all kind of toxins, then of course that, uh, um, but it's not just farmland, it's having the possibility to be food sustainable for every household. That will occupy the land and um, and will prevent corruption. Much more effective than to ban Israelis from buying land in certain countries, so that they won't settle, so to speak, is actually making sure that every resident has land. In fact, in countries like Namibia, where minimum viable income was practiced and people had land, even though they had something like plastic boxes housing, they had such growth that eventually Namibia returned, I think it was a 7 billion or $7 million dollar debt in one go, okay, one sudden day. Why? Different thinking. Now, I haven't been to Thailand. I've been one time in Cyprus, ate a beautiful, beautiful lasagna. They probably have a different name for it, and I probably made it in a terrible offense calling it lasagna. um, and that's what I pretty much I remember from Cyprus. But I was very lucky. Okay. In Romania, were not staying in the city, but outside the city, in kind of like an old simmer, where there was an old couple, where there's a couple there that was holding the place, and we were the only residents. It was a winter, and we saw how people put out the tomatoes for sale, and that was one of the unforgettable, like, hosting. Very simple and amazing and beautiful. Um, but yes, it is a known thing that other people don't come to Romania for the same purposes, okay? Um, but for that, people would have to repurpose their countries, because when their countries behave or have beliefs or policies that are more compatible with the do as thou wilt, there will always be, bigger devils. Okay? A devil, there would always be a bigger devil. Um, and so, and not only that, this discussion is actually very helpful for us Israelis that don't like that type of behavior within our corrupted institutions. Okay, because who would travel there? They would have to have money. Okay, they would have to have some public position. Okay, so that can spark a conversation. And indeed, I know it's uncomfortable because people are going to ask, well, what about Palestine? What about the Mama Talibans that are returning to Gaza after a genocide? The women are not the problem, they're being trafficked. But they're being trafficked by someone in countries where, and this is, shout out to Namibia, shout out to Somalia, because when Somalia outturned um, the ability to marry 12 years old girls, they were not just banning child marriage, and I know that there's a mini civil war in Somalia. I think about this right now. Um, but they were not just banning child marriage, they were banning a type of sorcery that derives on the energy of the infants. And I really suggest that you would listen to Annika Lucas. One particular interview, and it's also a shout out to a great channel that didn't get the exposure that it deserves. And this is Annika Lucas' interview. Okay, now you're going to see all my history and all the cat videos I've been watching. Um, and this is Choose Love, Not Fear. Okay, YouTube, choose Love, Not Fear. The Annika Lucas interview. Here she talks also about the Aleister Crowley and the sorcery of taking from the energy of the infants and the life energy of the children. And she experienced that in Europe with the founder of the WEF, with Bilderberg Group, and that was around the 70s. Okay, and we know that in the 70s we also had the oil crisis. Up until then, it was not possible to criticize Israel. Um, so, for me as an Israeli, I don't have a way to know to what extent does the dumb fuckery affect in Ausland, but I do see what it leaches onto. Because I would be traveling in the train and hearing four men sit and talk. What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand, and everybody knows that that's what they're doing in Thailand. Um, in the being half Dutch, okay, in the red light district, the people that do those things from like the corrupted Peter rings, the residues of that, or the people that manage to escape, they go through programming of being drug addict, and going into prostitution. And this is the red light district. And so the red light district couldn't talk about that in many terms. Um, the most they did was the White March that was in Paris, in Europe, around the Dutroux case. There's a big conversation about ritual abuse. But the thing is, everywhere they would place the International Court of Law, it would be a place of oscillation of um, the best of the best things and the worst of the worst things. And that indeed is what's happening also in Netherlands. And the red light district used to be a part of the fabric of Amsterdam. Then, when the Eastern tourists began to flood the places, they came to behave, I'm sorry, like the Israelis in Thailand. And then the people that lived next to the red light district began to protest because the clients were abusive, and from the perspective of the people around, now the red light district became something that's not a part of the fabric of society, but something that is causing disturbance, crime, violence, and so on in the neighborhood where it was not as pleasant to walk in. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? Okay, because that opens a conversation to why don't they protect like the women that basically, even if they're not trafficked by having a handler, um, they go through this because of programming that Annika Lucas talks about, and she's been through that phase. I don't know if in Netherlands or not, but she's been through that phase upon escaping basically a Petering cult as a child. I mean, smuggled out as a child. Just like United States doesn't like Israelis coming to work without permit, United States is one of the leading countries in human trafficking, and we see it with the Epstein list and the connection to Israel. So very difficult, and to be upfront when a pack of tourists come to rape 12 years old for zero money because their currency is even stronger, why would they obey the rules of that country? Okay, but like they come to get away with raping 12 years old. Why would they care about any law if they can do that and get away with that? Because that is legal in that country. That's the same problem Netherlands has been having, not just with the East, not just with the East, but it takes self-reflection because people would go about the red light district. In COVID, for example, there were articles about having less red lights in the red light district. This is how embraced into society that type of cult like human trafficking programming was, being normalized, seen as natural, and believing that we just need to take care of the welfare of the ladies, the working condition, sanitation, access to medicine, which is beyond bizarre. But again, because women a lot of the time were just behaving in not those exact ways, but around those ways in their marriages, then there wasn't anything to, okay, there wasn't anything to call that out. Definitely not the married woman, okay? And when a pack of tourists arrive to do that legally, why would they care about any law? They care, those that come to buy land care to get their permit residence. When I was in a Chabad dinner, okay, because I just wanted to absorb iron, so to separate the milk from the meat. And it was a Friday dinner, or I don't think it would be dinner. It was a Friday meal that later I would have to travel immediately to the shelter. And there was a person that was kind of like an international intelligence spy. I don't know. Um, and he was waiting for his 5 years in Netherlands so that he can get his permit. He was married to a young Thai woman. Okay. Um, and and one of the things he told us is like, there's no such thing. He said, I've been around the world. There's no such thing as human rights. So that gave us a glimpse to the worldview of a person who traveled the world. And then people want to, you know, preserve their lands after having a list of toxicity that the whether it's the Israelis or the Moroccans or the Easterns, okay, they just accentuate on. So the people that don't break the law, either they don't have money to travel, or like me and my mom, where we had money because of the subprime crisis, it was cheaper to travel than to rent an apartment, and it was impossible to buy an apartment and have job security at the place where we could afford buying an apartment. Later, that thing degraded into renting an apartment. Okay, so um, and all of that was by design. Those rituals are done to traffic people under the guise of marriage. So, after so much toxicity has been done, the outer or the colonization just accentuate on that. And as much as it's hated, it is kind of the last wake up call. And yeah, they can charge people that come to buy real estate illegally and so on and so forth. But first and foremost, is it legal to rape children there? Is it legal to rape there? Are those laws, if there are laws against that, are they being enforced? Israel, for example, exists as a flag today. Most of the land is between China, Britain, and some US. The white cheese, the tnuva, okay, the white cheese or the cottage cheese um, that one buys in the supermarket with a subsidized bread to have their morning bread, okay, is now owned by China. Okay, the factory is now owned by China. That was one of the pillars of local produce since the foundation of the country. The most export Israeli has in terms of technology is weapon technology that later land over our buildings. The new ones, mind you. With Saturn in Aries, it was the new ones, the new projects, and surveillance companies that don't manage to, embarrassingly, don't find all the missing children and youth and people. And Okay, definitely they don't return them to where they went missing from. So that's a big issue. We basically don't own our country while our country is being litigated for war crimes. Okay, granted that you're not an oil factory owner, or people think that they are going to make money with stocks and then buy land in Cyprus or in Gaza or in Thailand, they're having a reality check. And you definitely can't buy land in Israel because they're drilling the oil, they're drilling the gas. So the Middle East towards Asia is evolving. There is an infrastructure that they want to build, which is going to be along trail roads and so on, trade roads and so on and so forth. But again, if that's going to be based on human trafficking, don't complain about Israelis, Moroccans, Easterns not respecting the local rules. Like they come to rape children and pay less for that monetarily. What rules? If it's okay to rape a child, what rules? And that's the same in Israel. Israel is complaining about the work immigrants and refugees from Sudan or Eritrea. And I'm like, well, if our entire corrupt system is Epstein-like, of course that brings the same sorcery as the places where that's how women are treated, or children are treated. Cyprus is the same. Cyprus is particularly at risk because it was okay, you know, there was this rape of this British tourist that that was done by Israelis, and the Israelis were surprised. They never thought, like they were expecting to just get away with that again. So they are planning to build an Epstein Island out of Cyprus. One of the astrologers, a famous Israeli astrologer, he had an apartment in Cyprus, and he was like, "Hey, if you need a vacay or something like that, I rent this apartment and so on." And I'm like, tenderly evaded the question because, of course, the place is probably lovely and great for a vacay. Um, but hey, it's Cyprus. Is it safe for a woman to vacay alone in Cyprus? On the other hand, Namibia had the experiment of minimum viable income. Okay, basic income. It's not minimum viable income, it's basic income, but it was kind of minimum viable income. And even with that, they had such growth because each person had their own housing, their own plot of land, their ability to buy food, and then, of course, grow food. Namibia grew to a point where um, I think the Minister of Energy was fired so that Namibia will produce energy for Namibia, and they paid all their debt in one go. So, but when people don't even believe that their money can do something or that it would hold or sustain, then they get Gen Z like. My generation was even accused of, hey, why do people go twice to travel outside the country, but they cry about being in debt and so on. They don't know how to manage with money. They know how to manage with money. They just understand that the real estate is not real estating anymore, and they try to live their best life, because if they can find a place to live elsewhere, they'd go for that. And if they can't, they'll at least leave before they die. What does a normal millennial see? They see all of the people that went to live off grid during the Venus, okay, Uranus Taurus since 2018. All of them are dealing with dumb fuckery, you know, that the off grid is being offed, and that is because going to live off grid is fantastic, and some people could really not sustain the isolation of homesteading, which also needs to be said. Um, but the problem that we ran away from when trying to homestead or when going out of the city, we haven't really evaded, which is the infrastructure of the city. Do we have enough green parks? Do we have sovereign land for each person? And is the production of housing not imbued with ritual abuse and the type of Aleister Crowley sorcery? Is the intelligence of the country imbued with do as thou wilt, or does it honor sexual sovereignty and can actually access declares and defend oneself in the astral way more sovereignly? Not way more sovereignly, sovereign. This is how Namibia stands out, while the sister country Kenya, that did remove the diplomatic immunity of Bill Gates for something to do with vaccines and castrations. I think it was a malaria vaccine. They removed not only the malaria, um, oh, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they did not even remove the malaria. Um, so, and taking a loan to repay a loan, and you know, having a nice couple of shots with the people is not real, or having cult-like governance that is tribal based. And so, okay, this was one of the difficulties for the Bedouins in Israel. They were tribal society. They are tribal society. So people escaped to the city. They learned how to be, they learned to be doctors. They learned to be um, uh, uh, um, judges, and so on and so forth. They cannot judge a 14 years old or the youth or even a member of their own tribe, even though they escaped to the city to not deal with that. Okay, so now they have to meet that as judges, and it creates a lot of problems, first and foremost for the Bedouin. So, yes, I do hope that people will address these issues, um, both locally and internationally. Um, and it's right about time, because the world is changing, which means that actually it's a great opportunity. Okay, shout out to, okay, I will just remember it as Slavic girl. I will just remember it as Slavic girl right now. This requires a deeper introduction. if you don't know what is a great opportunity, it's not mine. It's a Slavic Girl channel. So yeah.